Hey, welcome to Scribo for Google Docs. First thing we're going to do is show you how to install it. Now, if you go to the Chrome Web Store and search for Scribo, you will find a few versions, but the one you want is Scribo for Google Docs. Click on that, add to Chrome. Now, we only ask for permission to change the data of the document that we are working on. So we can insert comments into the document that you are working on. That is all it does. We also copy and paste our rubric feedback into the document you are working on. That's the only permission we ask for. Many other systems ask for permissions to read and edit every website you go to. Never click on that. Do yourself a favor and never click on that. We ask for very simple permissions and we're off. So let's go back and have a look at how this plays out in Scribo for Google Docs. For Google Docs, you come into a Google Doc. And if it's not there, just refresh the page that you're on and up will pop the Scribo icon. Now this is where the app is managed. Everything to do with Scribo for Google Docs is done off this one little click here. So it's really efficient. And it's with you anytime you want to activate it. So students will send their documents into you. They'll share them. They'll come through Google Classroom. Those documents and work will always find a teacher. So when they do, this is what we do. Click on the button and set up what's called a profile. So a profile essentially is a construct of a name, a class, grade, subject, genre, and title. Now, topic. I don't know how people give feedback to students about what they've done well and badly if you don't understand what the topic is. But it seems that anything else out there will do it, and it's very, very general feedback about writing, nothing specific. So give it a good dose of what the topic is about and what the expectations of this essay are, and you'll have yourself a profile. Now, these profiles can be reused. So we know that if you're doing this essay for one student, you could be potentially doing it for 25 or 30 students. So use the same profile will default every time you open the next essay. If you've got a different essay, a different class, change your profile, set a new profile, and apply it to the document. So what goes into a profile? Well, a couple of things. Once you've set up your profile, you then set up how you want to run your feedback and rubric grading. And indeed standards. We align to all sorts of standards that are in the system. We're loading more and more all the time, but you can assess an essay against curriculum standards as well. So let's start from the top. Rubrics. We have a rubric library that you can choose from. You can also insert your rubrics and upload your own. It's very powerful what it can do there in taking on your rubrics. When you select your rubric, if I go to my rubrics or rubric library, I'll select an FCR writing, I'll see the rubric, check it's okay, and use that. So I've now got a rubric linked to the whole event. Writing goals is the special source of Scribo for Google Docs. Now, a lot of systems will just give you almost like random feedback. It comes in different shapes and sizes. It's never consistent. It won't say the same thing twice. If you go for feedback in some other systems, it will create random feedback on the essay. Push the button again and you get more random feedback on the essay. But what you're trying to do with your class is hone in on things like very particular grammar, spelling, possibly passive voice. Have they got fragmented long sentences? You're running pedagogy. You cannot run feedback as if it's like a casino roulette wheel where it just selects whatever you want it to create at random. So we do grammar, spelling on top of Google, and we do it really well. Spelling is spelling, but grammar support in Scribo for Google Docs is amazing, and we'll show you that next. You basically turn on the level of feedback you think is the most appropriate for your level of student. You are the teacher, it's your pedagogy, it's your assessment. You want the feedback to come back to them in a way that you're trying to channel the energy in the room. Now we're getting sort of like zone proximal development here. Why give students randomized complex feedback when what you're trying to achieve is get them in a place where they can improve bit by bit? This is the whole idea and the whole essence of Scribo for Google Docs, is to give that flexibility back into the Google Doc framework. So you set up your rubrics, your standards, your writing goals. You can have up to 5 writing goals. You can swap them in and out. Like you just deselect, add more in. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. And that's the extent of the setup. Now, what happens is, of course, a student sends their document to you. trouble always finds a teacher, so 35 documents will be shared either through Classroom or some other means through Google, and you'll open one. Now, there's one button to push for each document. You might say, this student, I want to rerun. I've already run this, but I'll show you how it works. You can rerun the results. So anytime a draft comes in, you can rerun the feedback, and it will start up and it will give feedback according to the recipe that you have set. Okay, it's not going to go off and do its own crazy thing. It's actually going to work within the framework that you've set up, and it will chug through this essay. While you can have a look at it, at what it's doing, it's going to take through all of the writing goals that you selected and start getting into the weeds on things like grammar, everything. Now, you'll notice that the feedback is really quite specific. It gives you what's going on here with grammar. It's tagging it, as you can see on the left-hand side. So we know what type of grammar issue it is, but we're explaining these issues to the students. So they're not just getting this blue squiggly line where they just select the word that Google or somebody suggests and move on. That doesn't help anybody really, because the same mistake comes through the next day that they write. So we're trying to slow things down, give better explanation about what's wrong. Let them ask questions, let you get some insights into the types of errors that are going on here. This is ticking along quite high. This student's got a lot of errors. Now, if you look back into Google, the blue is what Google found. The orange is what we have found. So we've found a heck of a lot more. Usually we find about 60% more issues than Google does in grammar. Spelling is spelling. So we now have a profile of this student. We now know that if we could fix word phrasing for this student, and you can click on that and get a very narrow view on where the word phrasing issues are. If we could fix word phrasing, we could get 22 errors off the deck, and that would be a great thing. So teachers still have all the ability of Google here to remove these comments, change these comments, add to these comments. It's nothing different. It's completely native Google commentary that's going on here, which is fantastic. There's a few extra things you can do. You can use Google, of course, to highlight and make your own comments as you normally do, except that we've put the microphone in here, which is an extra feature. So you can actually talk to the feedback and give students any other extra feedback that you think will make a better difference and be more appropriate. Don't forget to turn the microphone off. We've also got comment magic, which means check or improve this sentence. So if you find something you're not quite agreeable to, you can push the button, we'll rewrite the sentences in a better way. You can then add to it whatever you like, but you can also just hit comment and it will go straight through to the students as well. Okay, so it records everything. Now, this is a teacher version. Students have a very similar one, except they don't get to change the profile. So what you're doing here, they could do for you. It doesn't matter who runs this. There's an opposite side to it as well. So if you run it as a teacher and the students are not allowed to install the extension, you have all the power in the room to move through grading really quickly and really beautifully. If you wanted to get students working with this feedback on the other side, when you share this document, you'll get a code, a setup code, and the students simply enter that as a profile code and it's done. They are now linked into your profile, your active profile, and when they run the feedback, they'll get exactly what we're showing here, but they can't change it. They can't add more or less. They're kind of locked into that structure that you've set up for them. So you can keep the focus on students really capably. And that's really Scribo for Google Docs. Now you can run the feedback any other time you like. If the next version comes in, next just update the feedback. You'll also notice in feedback there is rubrics. So I've already run this, but I'll run it again. Again, as drafts come back in, you can rerun the rubric feedback. The rubric feedback's really solid. It's consistent. It's really good, and it can be inserted into the document. So if students don't have access to this, you can insert the rubric feedback straight into the document. Standards, you push the button and it will rate this essay against the standards that you've selected. So that easy again. We're recording this data as well. Stats is a really nice way for you to see an outline of what happened in this essay. It will give you the overview, standard kind of overview, but the breakup of sentences and vocabulary, which is really the two big things that teachers like to focus on when they're English teachers. and humanities teachers. Was this given? Is this a simple kind of text, or is this, are the words, are the intermediate and academic word levels improving? And also an impression of whether it was written by a human or not. Let's face it, there's a lot of LLM essays being written out there. We are not prescriptive on this. This is more of a heads up that we think 1 and 2 is different from the rest of them, and it possibly could be worth a conversation if you thought it appropriate. So again, that little panel there can be inserted into the document as a record of your stamp of approval or stamp of teacher. And uh, really, that's the extent of Scribo for Google Docs. You've got marking standards, fantastic feedback, flexibility, and of course, you've got Claro as well. Students have this essay coach, which basically understands the entire, what the topic is, what grade they're at, what rubrics we're using, the standards that we're assessing against. It understands all of that. So when someone says, "How can you help me?" It won't write anything for them. It will only ever give really good advice, and it can be done in multi-languages as well, so students can choose their native language. Now you'll find, and you should give this a try, but you'll find Claro to be really quite precise around how this essay could be improved. So it talks at the level of the student. It understands where the student's at. So it keeps the student, importantly, in this zone of proximal development, as opposed to making up broad sort of randomized content that comes from an LLM on the spot and can change the next time they do it. We try to keep students in a zone where they can slowly improve their work consistently. That's the biggest issue with LLM. It is not about the content these things produce, it's the context in which they run. And we keep context at the front of what we're doing without worrying about the enormity of the content, because the content is supposed to be the work of the student. Our job is to contextually improve that work. That's the difference that Scribo for Google Docs brings, and we hope you enjoy it as much as we do. Bye for now.